Hey guys, so today I have to go to the hospital unfortunately, so filling in for me is my friend Eric Carter. As you know, I'm trying to do one tech video on this channel per week, and Eric has stepped up to do this guest video. He's previously guested on my channel before. I hope you'll send him some love by subscribing to his channel linked below. And without further ado, here's Eric with a review of the Samsung Galaxy S8.
Hi everyone, it's Eric doing a review for Computing Forever. Today we will be reviewing the Samsung Galaxy S8. Now I have reviewed so many of Samsung's devices over the years, including last year's Galaxy S7. I remember making that review as if it was yesterday. I saved so much money from therapy bills you will not believe. Anyway, as you can tell, I was not particularly pleased with last year's Galaxy S7. Will Samsung learn from their mistakes with this year's Galaxy S8? Well, let's find out. Let's get to the review. So let's start off with the good aspects of this phone. The design. It is absolutely beautiful. And unlike Samsung's previous Galaxy smartphones, it doesn't look premium, it looks posh. That is literally the best way I can describe the design of this phone, and it's something that you won't fully understand or appreciate until you have actually held it yourself. So props to Samsung for improving the aesthetics. They even went as far as removing the physical home button, and I thoroughly approve of this because I never liked it in the first place. I firmly believe that a physical home button has no place on an Android smartphone, but Samsung only kept it because they wanted to maintain the template they stole from the iPhone's design. But that being said, even Samsung had sense and decided to keep the headphone jack. Next up is the display. It's a 5.8-inch Super AMOLED display running at a resolution of 1440 by 2960, and I can say with great confidence, the screen on the Galaxy S8 has the nicest colours I have ever seen on a smartphone. They're bright, vivid, and incredibly colourful. But unlike previous AMOLED screens from Samsung, the colours are not over-exaggerated. They are overstated just enough so that they're able to look incredibly colourful while still looking perfectly natural. Samsung even gave the display a different aspect ratio to reduce the amount of bezel surrounding the panel. As a result, the screen does lend itself to a unique viewing experience. The only compromise is that the new screen does not support pretty much all video formats, and that becomes blatantly apparent as you get these really noticeable black bars on either side of the display when you're watching videos, and consequentially consuming media like this just doesn't feel right. But thankfully, Samsung do have a little workaround for it. If you press this button in the bottom right corner, it will crop the video to fit the screen. And this really is where the compromise all comes down to you. If you are okay with missing out on some of the image, then this shouldn't be a problem for you. But if, like me, you notice when part of the image is missing, then this will be a major annoyance and distraction to you. And unfortunately, this also applies to games too, and the only way for it to be rectified is if the app developers release an update specifically designed for the Galaxy S8. Now as for software, the Galaxy S8 is running Android version 7.0 Nougat, and as always, it comes equipped with Samsung's TouchWiz UI. Now something you'll notice right off the bat is that some of the app icons are optimized for Samsung's new visual format, but the ones that aren't have this horrible grey border around them. Now it is worth noting that the TouchWiz skin is not as visible or heavy as it's been in the past, but it still feels like dead weight. I personally just can't fully enjoy the Android experience as much because TouchWiz makes it feel restricted and stiff when compared to stock Android. Now that being said, I do appreciate that Samsung have kept some of the staples from Android Nougat, such as the new app drawer, the multitasking UI, and heck, even the notification bar feels like it's less influenced by TouchWiz. Now an interesting TouchWiz only feature is Samsung's new voice assistant called Bixby, and it is definitely a mixed bag. On the one hand, it does things that other voice assistants can't do, such as interacting with an app once it's open. But on the other hand, it just gives you a bunch of stuff that Google Now already has. I think Samsung should focus all their time on making Bixby a secondary voice assistant. More of an extension to Google Now's voice commands, which in all fairness are still very basic and limited. And the reason I say that is because out of all of Samsung's gimmicks over the years, this one has the most potential. So much so that I think Google should have a look at Bixby, take notes, and advance Google Now in a very similar direction, because all voice assistants currently allow you to do is ask for information, set reminders, and toggle some of your phone's settings. That's really about it. When it comes to vocally interacting with applications, we have very limited control over them. So Bixby does have potential, and I look forward to seeing this technology advance over the years. Next, let's talk about performance, and as you would expect from a latest smartphone, it is awesome. The phone has an octa-core processor, 4GB of RAM, and an Adreno 540 GPU, and as a result, games and applications run absolutely flawlessly, and navigating around the operating system is incredibly smooth. Although the only thing that kind of bothers me is that the app drawer animation kind of stutters almost every time you open it. I wouldn't mind as much, except for when you take into account that all the other animations on the phone are buttery smooth, this is noticeable and kind of takes away from the consistent and overall fluid experience, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. Now in my opinion, the best feature of this phone is the 12 megapixel camera. It is very quick to open, incredibly easy to operate, and the photos are absolutely packed full of detail, and they look absolutely stunning. I especially love the depth of field effect it leaves when you focus on either the foreground or the background. It can also record 4K video, which is incredibly detailed, full of colour, and is all round crystal clear. This really is the best camera I have ever used on a smartphone to date. It even has the best method of switching between the front and rear cameras. You just flick your finger anywhere from within the app and it switches between modes. Speaking of which, it also has an 8 megapixel front-facing camera, which is also very good at taking selfies. But I am honestly of the minority who doesn't care about selfies, and even if I was, I would resort to the superior rear-facing camera anyway. So yeah, I have absolutely no complaints with the camera. It really is fantastic, and by far my favourite feature of the entire phone. Okay, so up until now, I've pretty much been singing this phone's praises. Well, now let's talk about the things that were not so great about the Galaxy S8. First off, we're going to talk about something that Samsung always seem to screw up at. The speaker. Now I am so tired of getting mad at the speakers in Samsung's phones, so I'm not going to do that this time. I'll just tell you that as you would expect, it's okay. It does the bare minimum to improve over its predecessor, and what's more disappointing is that the last two volume levels make all the sound from the phone sound very electronic and robotic. So I am very disappointed with the speaker on this, and it is one of the primary reasons why I would personally not pick this phone up as my daily driver. The next problem is the battery life, and I am really quite surprised at how lackluster the battery has been on this. Usually with the previous iterations of the Galaxy S, I'm able to get a day and a half between charges, but with the S8, I've only been able to get a day, and that is only with medium use. If I hardly use the phone, I will get 2 days, and if I use it heavily for media consumption, social networking and entertainment, then it will need a top up by about 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Now your use may vary, but the battery has really been below par to me. Now I have already expressed how much I love the design, but my only problem with it is the relocated fingerprint scanner. I would have been fine with it if it was positioned on the center of the phone's back. It would be far easier to reach and I would easily be able to get used to it. But seeing as the S8 has a taller profile, you really need to stretch your finger to even touch this thing. So I thought, okay, I just need to use the phone for a few days and I'll get used to it. I have used this phone for over 2 weeks now and I still can't accurately memorize where to place my finger. It doesn't help that this fingerprint scanner requires you to put your finger exactly on the center, otherwise it will fail to unlock the phone. I am quite surprised as to how average this fingerprint scanner is. There are many other Android phones that have incorporated them intuitively and I have gotten along with them just fine, so I find it odd that Samsung of all people is the one to drop the ball on this. I mean, it's so much of a nuisance that I don't even bother unlocking the phone with it. I just input my password instead as it's a lot quicker. And those are all my major bad points, although keeping in mind the new screen dimensions is not ideal for media enthusiasts. TouchWiz, you either love it or you hate it, and the speaker is pretty terrible too. So overall, I did find a lot of enjoyment in using the Galaxy S8. I mean, granted, it hasn't done much different with regards to usability, but in a time where all phones feel very much the same, I kind of liked the subtle and not so subtle revisions Samsung have made here. So the Galaxy S8 is a big improvement over its predecessor from last year, and it gets a very strong 7 out of 10. If you don't mind the compromise that comes with the new screen dimensions, then it gets an 8. So that's it for my review of the Samsung Galaxy S8. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to Dave's channel. And then click on the link in the description below and then check out my channel. And you'll be really probably quite surprised with the content I produce. By the way, did you guys realize this was a green screen the whole time? Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching and I'll catch all of you next time. Take care.